Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Status Effects Show. I'm your host, Michael Atkins, and today we've got a good one for you. Now, when a lot of people think of event marketing, they think of weddings, corporate events, or conventions. Let's focus on that last one for a second. Conventions are organized events where groups of people congregate to learn, experience, and celebrate a shared interest. Now, these gatherings, they can last hours to days and are usually cram-packed with activities, company booths, and presentations. Now, imagine that this convention hosts multiple tournaments and competitions on top of all of that. That's just a brief overview of what DreamHack has to offer. Here to talk more in depth about how to market and gain the maximum exposure for an event, the North American marketing manager at DreamHack and a personal friend of mine, Mr. Justin Varghese. Justin, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, Michael, thank you for having me. It's long overdue for sure. I see from the time that we last spoke, you've grown a fearsome beard.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you.
Much more respectable than the scruff that I have, which is not so much a concentrated effort as it is just sheer pandemic laziness at best.
No, it's good, man. It's good. I like what you're doing with it. You were talking about your hair earlier, like just trying to get that. How's that been? Just managing everything.
Well, let's see. My last haircut, I was fortunate. I was able to get one in right before DreamHack Anaheim.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's been a while. I'm not used to having hair so long, and I know a lot of people that actually have long hair are gonna look at me and say, "What are you talking about?" But this is a lot. I like it whenever you can just wake up and get out of bed and your hair is just fine, like ready for the day.
Yeah.
I can't do that right now, but also fortunately I don't have to see anybody right now, so I guess it kind of balances out a little bit.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Well, I'd like to start off by telling sort of the story about how we met, because it's kind of interesting to me. I've told a little bit about it before, but essentially we both attended the In-Game Leaders Conference back in January of 2020, and it was January, right? January or February?
I'm pretty sure it was January because it was the Winter Summit. Yeah, I was speaking at that.
Yeah, it was January, and you were speaking at it. I saw your presentation among some other people's presentations as well, and I just fell in love with esports all over again. So I had my toe dipped in the water of esports for many years, but this is kind of that conference is what sort of reignited my fire. And after the conference was done, I caught up with you. I said, "Hey, man, great. That was a great presentation." And then we started talking. I was also bringing resumes to people because I wanted to get involved. Be like, "Here's my skill set. Here, just basically let me do something." So I handed you a resume. You were like, "Yeah, we'll talk," and things like that. And we ended up talking for a little bit. And then you eventually invited me out to a couple drinks with some of the esports crew, which was amazing. So yeah, I was so grateful. At first I was like, man, I don't want to I don't want to impose or anything. I don't want to impede. And you're like, nah, it's cool. We'll just come along, ask some questions, just kind of soak everything in and just hang out. And that's exactly what we did, and I thank you so much for that, for introducing me to all those people.
Dude, I'd like to think that esports is a really welcoming atmosphere overall. We definitely have a lot of hostility, I'd say, towards people who come in acting like they know everything without ever having gone to an event or anything like that. But whenever it's honest, earnest people that are just trying to learn and understand what the space is all about and approach it in a genuine manner, trying to help however they can, pretty much everybody in this space I think is willing to lend an ear and at least point folks in the right direction in that mind, you know.
Absolutely, and that's been my experience throughout this whole thing. Is I've been networking and talking to a bunch of people, and everybody's very open. And we kind of talked about that with Jonathan Jordan on the first podcast about how this is a very welcoming community, and it feels like this giant passion project. I say that pretty much every episode so far, but it's this giant passion project right now, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, so we were having a conversation yesterday with the team, and it's kind of wild to think that when we were all kids growing up, we could have never envisioned that this is a thing that we could do, right? Like it was just so far out of left field. And now to get to the point where you're able to not only work on this as a passion project, but actually have a living off of it is absolutely incredible. And I'm just really grateful to be here. I feel like one of the things that makes esports work is the fact that it so many passionate people that care about it so much.
Absolutely.
And as a result of that, we're able to, I think, kind of really push ourselves to the limit whenever it comes to working as hard as possible. Because a lot of companies in this space, our company, of course, included, operate on very lean, mean teams. And somehow we're able to come together and pull off absolutely Herculean efforts, which is incredible, I think, to say the least.
Absolutely. I mean, it's that passion that drives the ability to be able to create these massive projects, like you were saying, and on these skeleton crews almost, or just very lean crews, which is amazing. But sort of more about you. How did you get into esports in the scene?
Do you want the short answer or the long answer?
You know what? We can cut it down if we need to. It's as much as you're willing to give.
I'll meet you somewhere in the middle. So
Sounds
when
good.
I was a kid, I loved gaming, and I think my biggest aspiration back then was to get to the point where I could actually make a game myself. And what I found out pretty quickly was I have the mind of a creative person, but the hands of an accountant. So
Okay.
creative really wasn't up my alley. But I've always had this passion for gaming, and I've been able to just be blessed with a lot of opportunities to make the most of that passion. When it came to Smash, for instance, I started off as a competitor, ended up transitioning to being a play-by-play commentator, eventually ended up doing commentary for about a dozen different games, working with companies like Activision Blizzard and the Pokemon Company on various projects.
Wow.
And now here we are at DreamHack, funny enough. In fact, before I started working at DreamHack full-time as an employee, I actually commentated at DreamHack Austin 2017. And that
Wow.
for me was such a huge goal, because I remember even back then, whenever I was just beginning my commentary journey, when DreamHack made the announcement they'd be coming to the States for the first time, I remember thinking, I need to make it a point to get here. So
Yeah.
now, all these years later, actually working for the company full time is just the best experience. Because at the end of the day, I think even back then, whenever I was a kid, what I really wanted more than anything else was not really just making games. It was more so just showing my love and passion for gaming as a whole to as many people as possible. So to now be in that position to do that with my role at DreamHack is just absolutely unbelievable.
That's amazing. I mean, I share that sentiment with you as far as trying to bring gaming, the joy of gaming, to as many people as possible. And I think you guys over at DreamHack are doing an amazing job. And you specifically, Justin. I mean, it's been crazy to see DreamHack. I haven't personally been to the DreamHack yet. This was supposed to be my first one this year.
Sorry, buddy.
Hey, no, it's all good. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But sort of give the people an overview of what DreamHack is, because a lot of people they hear these conventions, and there's so many. I guess not really so many to choose from, but I mean there's multiple conventions, and each one does something uniquely different.
Right. Yeah. So we'll walk it back a little bit first and kind of put the framework in regards to DreamHack as an esports product.
Okay.
Most esports events in general, I'd liken to concerts, right? In the sense that there's one main stage, everyone's there in the room to enjoy one specific thing. So you have a product like Overwatch League. Everybody's in the arena,
Yep.
Or I guess at home right now, but in the arena, theoretically, with one main stage, and it's all about Overwatch. LCS, all about League of Legends. DreamHack is really unique in this space because while most of the other events that happen are more like a concert, DreamHack really acts more like a festival than anything else, in the sense that instead of having one main stage with one game, each of our shows around the world has anywhere between 7 to 13 main stages, each with a different game or a different group of games. And what that presents to a spectator and a consumer and an attendee of DreamHack is a really unique experience. I think that DreamHack is really wonderful, especially for people who are new to the esports space, because it kind of gives you a petri dish look, if you will, at everything that's really culminating within the space. Because you'll have these massive $250,000 Counter-Strike events on one stage with 16 of the best players in the world duking it out, or 16 of the best teams, and then right next to that stage you'll have a grassroots fighting game scene, right? A fighting game dedicated stage, where the prize pool isn't nearly as big. It's still a very respectable prize pool, but you just see the passion from that side of the spectrum. And I think to be able to juxtapose, top of the food chain from a funding perspective, esports, with more grassroots ventures and fitting in everything in between, and coupling that with the latest and greatest from publishers and developers of various sizes on our expo floor, concerts at night, and just way too many activities makes it so that DreamHack really is a one-of-a-kind event. I think the best compliment that we get about our show is from folks who say, hey, I know that your event is 3 days long and it's open 24 hours each day, but I still feel like there's not enough time for me to do everything I want to do and see everything I want to see at the show.
So I feel like that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
my hairline might disagree. But,
that's true. Yeah. That's got to be very stressful and nerve-wracking for somebody in your position. But as a consumer and as somebody who's going to the event, to have so many things that you have to pick and choose which ones that you're going to go to, I mean, that's like a kid in a candy store almost, right? Yeah. There's so many options and you want to choose them all, but you got to sort of just pick and choose. So I think that's amazing from a consumer's perspective. You said that there are how many competitions going on at once at your event?
Well, we have anywhere from 7 to 13 different stages at each event.
Wow.
So, and again, like some of those stages are all dedicated to one thing, like Counter-Strike, Rocket League.
Sure.
Each having their own dedicated stage. But then you have something like the fighting game stage.
And
the FGC stage will have within that stage 8 tournaments running, if not more. It's pretty nutty.
That's insane, dude.
Yeah.
And you were saying this is, I know this personally, but for our audience, DreamHack is a worldwide event. How many countries do you guys do the convention in? I should say.
I mean, it's we usually do the festival. I mean, it changes year to year.
Okay.
Last year we did 15 shows in 9 different countries, for instance. I think this year we were supposed to do 10, but obviously with the state of the world, it's kind of made it so some of those things are a bit out of our control, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But we're a big worldwide brand with a lot of big plans to really elevate what the brand means, not only within the world of esports as a whole, but within the whole gaming zeitgeist.
Right. So we've kind of gone over what DreamHack is as far as an esports competitive scene. What else can people expect when they walk into a DreamHack festival?
So much content. Way too much content. Just to run by a couple of things, like I mentioned before, each night we actually have concerts that kind of encapsulate different elements of music that's really tailored around the cities that we're in. So for instance, in Dallas, one of our nights was a metal night because Dallas has a deep metal culture. And in Atlanta in the past, we've had a hip hop night because Atlanta and hip hop, it's almost synonymous at that point.
Absolutely.
Right? In addition to that, we're really positioning ourselves as a gaming lifestyle festival. So we're touching on so many different elements. So in addition to music being one of those pillars, things like film and television are actually elements that we're starting to build more into the show. We actually had Ryan Reynolds' new film Free Guy do some footage at DreamHack Anaheim.
You're kidding me.
They sent crews over to the BYOC to get some B-roll and things like that to put into the film, funny enough.
That's
So
amazing. I really
yeah.
want to see that movie. So Ryan Reynolds is one of my favorite actors, and that
Oh,
movie
he's the
looks
best.
great.
Yeah, he's just it's so wild, especially in this quarantine. My wife and I have been able to watch a lot of old TV and just watching like an episode of Scrubs and being like, what the hell is Ryan Reynolds doing
Oh,
here? You know,
yeah. I mean, it's insane.
he's had quite an arc for sure,
Yeah.
I'd say. But he's awesome. In addition to that, we actually have a dedicated stream studio on site as well. So this is an area where if you're a streamer, you don't have to worry about bringing a rig or anything like that. We actually provide a top of the line computer for you
That's
with
cool.
all the peripherals top of the line as well, so you can stream straight from the heart of the event itself. Any show we have, anywhere from 100 to 150 influencers within that area alone,
Sure.
which is really cool. DreamHack, of course, is really world renowned for being the largest LAN party in the world. So the
Yeah.
BYOC section is absolutely massive. We did have the Guinness Book of World Records for the largest LAN in history. I think it was 22,000 unique devices for an event that we did in Sweden, which is
That's
you take
huge.
the largest LAN in the States. You can multiply that by a factor of 7, and still it's not as big, which is kind of insane.
That is insane.
Yeah.
And I mean, DreamHack started, from what you've told me, DreamHack started as a smaller sort of LAN party, right?
Yeah, I mean, when it started, it just was literally a small group of friends meeting up in their cafeteria for a weekend of gaming, hacking, and coding. And then it just grew into this global juggernaut that has over 350,000 attendees worldwide.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I love hearing stories like that. Something that's smart, that starts so small, and then it keeps getting bigger and bigger because so many people are in love with the idea, and so many people want to watch it grow and help it grow. That's amazing.
I think it's a couple of things too on top of that. One thing is, of course, as gaming grows and esports grows and that whole vertical of everything that's kind of tangential to gaming grows, we've been very fortunate that we've been able to kind of grow along that and have some neat experiences like Jeff Goldblum shooting a documentary at our show, for instance, at Dallas last year and things like that. But I think more importantly than any of that is the fact that even though we have so many different kinds of people there for so many different reasons as their initial draw, the sense of community that you feel at DreamHack is one of a kind. You can go anywhere in that show floor and feel absolutely welcome. You could be a diehard Rocket League player and fan, and out of the corner of your eye catch people popping off at the fighting game stage, wander over there and immediately strike up conversations with people, make a ton of new friends, and get a ton of insight regarding what's going on in the game. And I think that unique ability to bring together so many people from so many walks of life is not only what DreamHack is about, but I think that from a grand scale, it's the beauty of what gaming is all about.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have made so many connections through gaming alone and through online streaming and content creation, things like that. I mean, people who share an interest, they want to talk to people who share an interest or try and get people into the things that they're interested in. So if you strike up a conversation at one of these festivals or conventions or just online somewhere, I mean, a lot of times especially when it's centered around gaming, it's just so genuine. It's such a genuine passion. Which is great to see. So that's kind of would you say that sums up DreamHack a little bit, a massive overview, if you will?
It's about as good as I can do, though.
Okay.
To be honest, you won't fully understand DreamHack until you're there. So as soon as the world gets a little less crazy, shameless plug, you're trying to figure out a way to get yourself to an event for sure.
I imagine that's true. So what do you do for the company? I know you're the North American marketing manager. What does that mean as far as for DreamHack is concerned?
Yeah, the simplest answer is I get butts and seats, man. It's nothing really too complicated to that.
I've heard that before.
Yeah. No, I guess if I had to dive a little bit deeper, the big thing that I tried to do within my role is kind of twofold. So the first part of my role, and the majority of it really is regionally focused.
Okay.
Each of the events that we do stateside, I really want to be aggressive, especially whenever it comes to our growth goals as an event and as a company, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really trying to build a ton of relationships regionally, while also simultaneously setting up some pretty standard marketing funnels and things like that
Sure.
to make it so that we can reach as many people as possible. One of the things that I'd say is a challenge of DreamHack, and also one of his strengths, is the fact that it's not just one thing that attracts just one community.
Right.
It's a massive, multifaceted behemoth of an event that you can't just have a simple, I guess you can't just, I guess, sticker and flyer, right? Like you can't put DreamHack on a flyer, for instance,
Yeah, it might take a couple.
And convey the message,
Yeah.
right? So for me, from a mindset perspective, the way I think about it is it's all about getting the right content to the right person at the right time. And so a lot of my role really revolves around figuring out what kind of relationships we can build within these regions respectively, whether they are something as simple as a tournament organizer for a grassroots event, all the way up to C-level folk at school boards, for instance, and people within the government itself also. Building those kinds of relationships is really key because you're able to essentially have these champions internally that are able to advocate for your brand and maybe one specific subset of your event itself to flip the switch and all of a sudden get so many people to come through to the event. And once they come through the event, it's very often one of those cases where, hey, maybe it's a Smash player that comes for Smash, but they stay because of literally everything else that's happening at the event itself.
Right.
So yeah, that's probably the big part of my role is doing that. Of course, managing any of the local teams that we have as well whenever it comes to strategy and execution of these specific marketing plans.
Okay.
The other side is a bit more vague, and probably represents about 25% of my role, and that would be what kind of plays we're making more at a national level to make it so that our brand notoriety on the Western Hemisphere as a whole is really improved, right? And there's a ton of stuff that we're working on even right now that I can't really talk about at the moment, but we see it as really a big long-term play more than anything else. Especially in regards to how we're looking to continuously grow the festival, as well as the brand worldwide and of course here stateside.
Sure. So what does a project like this, what does a festival like this, what does that timeline look like? I mean, I imagine you have to start planning these things so long in advance.
Yeah. No, it is a ton of planning, especially a first year show in particular. The runway there is well over a year.
Okay.
In the making. Now, as you get better at it, and as you go back to the same venue, for instance, and things like that, and you understand all the quirks and stuff, that runway becomes a little bit easier to execute, but it's still absolutely massive whenever it comes to an executional perspective. For me, I guess I'm very fortunate that I focus on the marketing side of things specifically, because with that, it's a bit more tight when it comes to some of these windows and whatnot. There's, for instance, a period when you're 6 months out or so, if not more, where it's all about strategy work primarily.
Right.
And then you're starting to put in and execute certain bits of those strategies. I'd say maybe around the 4-month mark or so, as far as regional activations and things like that go. And during that time period between when you start really pushing and when you're at the event itself, it's all about really evaluating and reevaluating what you're doing to see if there are ways that you can be really more impactful. I think that if I have to get really meta about marketing as a whole for a second, I feel like a lot of people are really obsessed with impressions at the moment. But I think that the more important thing that people don't really talk about enough is impact. Because the reality is that you could have a ton of impressions, but if it's not the right impression, it doesn't really mean anything at the end
So
of the day.
essentially, you guys try and look at your KPIs as sort of a conversion rate, right? Like you said, your job is to get butts in seats.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what you're looking for. Is did they see the marketing materials that we put out, and are they going to attend the event, essentially?
Exactly. And I think a lot of it too is just understanding what goes into a customer's purchasing decision.
Mm-hmm.
And deeper than that, I think this is something that's probably ubiquitous with any company in the world. Knowing your customer is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Period.
And I mean, you were talking about there's something for everybody at DreamHack. So basically, there's the value that is going to drive the customer, the consumer, to want to purchase a ticket to go to the event, because you all are marketing as we have all of these events. You are going to be struggling to choose just one, right?
Yeah.
You're going to want to hit every single thing, and you're not going to be able to, but that's okay, sort of deal.
Yeah, and I think that for me, just because I'm weird, I like to kind of put people into buckets and things like that.
Okay.
So you can kind of understand, like, if it's a fighting game player, they're interested, of course, in fighting games primarily.
Mm-hmm.
Then figuring out the Y and the Z that they're also interested in, so you could package that together, is really important.
Yeah.
And being able to have that sort of granular detail to each of the different demos you're targeting makes it so that instead of you just shotgunning out the entire show to a person,
yeah,
you're able to make it so that you're giving them on a platter exactly what they want to see, so that it compels them to make a purchasing decision.
So are you able to kind of go into some sort of strategy that leads you to that decision? Like, how do you look at somebody who is, for instance, into fighting games, and how do you sort of assume the need that they're also going to have?
I don't assume, honestly.
Okay.
A lot of it, again, is really hands-on marketing.
Right.
It's not just, setting it and forgetting it, which I think a lot of people in the festival space make the mistake of. I have a ton of conversations every single day. When you're able to talk to community leaders, say within the fighting game scene,
mm-hmm.
and talk to them about how we as DreamHack can build a better product for them and their community, you're able to very easily tailor something towards those folks specifically, and you're able to grow the show with them and get a ton of buyback as a result of that. And I think that whether you're having those kinds of conversations again with somebody who's in charge of fighting game tournaments at a grassroots level, or if it's even a C-level person at a K-12 school district who's looking to get their kids involved in esports.
Yeah.
As long as you're able to talk to all these people constantly, while also talking to the existing base of people that you have, you're able to not only create really compelling marketing, but more importantly, create a more compelling show that keeps people there.
Right. So it's all about the community engagement and all about trying to give the people what they want, which is amazing.
100%.
It sounds like a festival that is community driven. You guys really take the feedback that you get and that you hear and implement it into the festival, which is amazing.
Yeah, and there's of course obviously like some risks you have to take too.
Sure.
I think the reality of people sometimes is they don't know what they want until it's right in front of them.
Right.
So you do have to make a little bit of an educated guess here and there, especially when you're experimenting with new types of content.
Right.
And getting even deeper than that, what I personally believe is what works, say, at a DreamHack event in Sweden might not work in Dallas, might not work in Atlanta, might not work in Anaheim. And I think it's really important to figure out how you can build the best show possible for the audience that you have there, while also building for the audience that you want in the years to come.
Right. Okay. I like that. And speaking about the years to come and focusing kind of on the future, I know you mentioned that you have talked to schools and things like that. I mean, can you kind of go into that a little bit more in detail as far as trying to run this from an educational perspective?
Yeah, we're living in a really interesting time right now.
Mm-hmm.
whereas gaming has grown, people are starting to recognize, I guess, what I've known all along as a kid. But gaming is not simply a degenerate activity like a lot of folks, especially, I guess, in previous generations, tend to assume.
Right.
It's actually really helpful whenever it comes to helping people build a ton of skills, particularly, I believe, in leadership, problem solving, and communication. And when you look at schools, for instance, I'd say that my biggest criticism of schools as a whole, for the most part, is they're really good at catering towards about 10% of their students.
Okay.
And the vast majority of students, unfortunately, are kind of left out of the funnels that school provides, at least from a competitive perspective. To get a little bit more granular into that, you could probably take a look at me and know that I was never destined to be a lineman in football. But because I was competitive in gaming, that gave me a competitive edge and drive that I was not only able to apply towards how well I did in Smash, for instance, but I was able to actually take that sort of drive and those learnings I got from gaming and apply it directly to my career as well. And so, circling back on how that impacts schools directly, the way that I see it is now you have a way to make it so that it's not only like this 10% of folks who are genetically gifted enough to be able to be competitive in athletics, for instance, who are really excelling to a degree and getting that competitive advantage. It's now being offered to folks of any background, any gender, any orientation, any age even, to make it so that now you're able to set these kids up with very valuable skills. And the way I see it, and the way that a lot of C-level people as well at school districts see it as well, is that it's not just about the game. It's everything around the game as well that's super important. So you could have a kid who maybe isn't the best at hitting their shots necessarily, but they could be really good at player management. And if you're good at things like player management, long term, that means that you're really good at one of the most important skills, conflict resolution. And being able to help assist those kinds of building blocks and teach people in a really fun, organic way is just stellar. And I think that the schools that are really taking advantage of these kinds of programs and dipping their toes into the water are very quickly figuring out that now these kids in the past who don't fit within that 10% or so that are engaged in school are now very engaged and they're able to reach the rest of the audience as well, because they're using gaming as a conduit for education, knowledge, and learning and skills development.
Absolutely. And I think gaming has become so prevalent in the mainstream's eye now that schools can no longer ignore sort of its impact on future generations. So, I mean, it seems nowadays that almost everybody plays some sort of video game, whether it's PC, console, or on your phone, right? Exactly. So, I think that if they decided to implement some sort of programs in schools as an extracurricular activity, I think that a lot of kids would really benefit. And like you said, there are so many different aspects about the gaming industry and the esports industry that kids can get into and learn about. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do with this show is to show people that there are so many things that you can do. It's not just player, and it's not just commentator, graphic designer. It's everything. It's a sportscaster. I mean, coach. There's so many different routes that you can go in this industry. And I think that if kids could learn about that from, I mean, even the middle to high school level, I think it would be amazing. And it would open a lot of people's eyes because I know I would have done that had I had the chance.
Same.
I was in.
I'm jealous.
Exactly. I was in sports and like theater and choir and things like that growing up. But if there was a video game option, you bet I would have picked that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because that's where my passion was. I would go home and play video games every day after school. So. Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I spoke with Danny Martin over at Geekleets last week. Yeah, he's a
great dude.
Yeah, awesome guy. Love what they are doing over there at Geekleets. And that's actually the podcast that's going up today. Well, it'll be out if you're watching this on YouTube right now. It's already out. But Yeah, he was talking about different programs, about how they're trying to educate kids and how they're trying to give them sort of a career advantage in the industry, and I think that's sort of where it's headed, and that's amazing. Um, but back to so marketing, you kind of went over different pipelines and things like that, and traditional marketing, and I imagine the marketing that you have to do for DreamHack and a festival like DreamHack is a little bit specialized, or does it kind of tailor to? I mean, obviously you want to tailor to your audience, but do you basically apply the same fundamental principles of traditional marketing?
I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I don't even know if traditional marketing is applying the fundamental principles of traditional marketing. You know,
Sure.
I feel like marketing as a whole has been totally flipped on its head with the advent of the internet, the influencer economy, and everything like that.
Yeah.
Not to mention how important concepts like experiential marketing now are, especially to big brands. The things that worked, I think, even 10 years ago aren't really relevant anymore, and everybody's trying to figure out, um, I guess, how to best approach this new world.
I agree.
And even for us, I'd say that nothing is solved completely. I think that's the best part about my job too, is what works for one DreamHack works for one DreamHack. You know?
Yeah, that's fair.
And don't get me wrong, it's not like I have to reinvent the wheel every single show or anything like that. I do feel that it's just really important again, and that's why we're so lucky to have such a great team that's really good at trying and executing a strategy, and then evaluating and reevaluating how effective that particular strategy is, so we can figure out ways to pivot. I'd also say that, like any festival, one of the big components of our show's growth really comes down to word of mouth. Because if you go to an event specifically and you have a great time and you're able to set the festival up in a way where it really incentivizes an everyday consumer to push on your behalf the FOMO factor organically, that makes it so that next year they'll come with friends, or people will see this and naturally organically come through. I think that one term that we talk about a lot is a tipping point, where it's a really large spike of people out of nowhere one particular year. And that really is what kicks off the snowball, if you will.
Sure.
And at that point, I think a lot of what I'm doing is going to be more B2B centric from a marketing perspective, rather than being such a heavy B2C lean. Because right now it's a lot of B2C, because we're really educating our customer base about the event itself. But pandemic willing, I suppose, as time goes on and we've kind of made a presence and we don't have to educate as much to a general population, that means that, at least with my role, it means I can reshift the focus to, instead of being 90-10 customer B2C, B2B, it could be completely inverse, where it's B2B focused with a little bit of B2C.
Okay. Gotcha. What are some of the challenges that come with marketing an esports event? I mean, this is a traditionally virtual event, so how do you get butts in seats?
Well, I will say, I think that pretty much every pitch deck in the gaming and esports space will have some sort of line that's something like, we have a digitally native audience.
Yeah.
And the challenge is, you have to, as a marketing person, get that digitally native audience that's so comfortable watching things from the comfort of their own home, from the comfort of their gaming chair, their couch, whatever, and convince them that it's worth taking the risk to go outside and come to the event itself. The fortunate thing, though, is people will tell you immediately that there is no comparison regarding the live event experience versus the at-home experience.
Absolutely.
Don't get me wrong, the at-home experience is great.
Yeah.
But the live experience is something else. It is an entirely different behemoth. The sheer energy in the room and the passion is just nuts. And I think that that's one of the things that kind of helps us win that battle long term, is people see like, man, this is a ton of fun to watch, and it's right here. Who knows? Maybe I'll give it a shot. And they take a look. They're like, this is ludicrous.
Oh yeah. The
yeah.
energy that you feel at one of these live shows or these live
Exactly.
festivals, I mean, it's no different than a concert or a traditional sporting event.
100%.
I mean, you still feel that energy and that passion when the whole crowd is screaming and cheering and just going nuts after somebody makes an amazing play or something like that. So I think it's definitely an electrifying experience.
Yeah, it's just about getting that person to take the leap, and that's, I think, what our goal is as marketers.
Yeah,
create a compelling enough narrative at the end of the day that pushes someone to make a decision to come through to an event and take a chance.
Yeah,
and we're very fortunate. I'm very fortunate. I know a lot of folks at some point in their career usually have to market something that they don't really believe in. That maybe isn't the best product, and I'm very fortunate that I really truly do believe in what I push, and I know that whenever someone takes a shot and comes to a DreamHack event, it's going to be the best decision that they made when it comes to an event perspective.
And that's key, especially because your audience is so genuine, and you and the festival is so genuine by providing a space for an audience to congregate and to just share their passions. Yep. So I think you guys, like I said earlier, are doing it right. So how do you feel about the current state of esports right now? I mean, pandemic aside, before pre-COVID-19, how do you feel like esports is getting along in the mainstream?
So esports is in a really interesting place, to say the least. I think that for me, not just talking about esports, but gaming as a whole has had some really radical shifts in the last few years. For me personally, I view an event like Ninja streaming Fortnite with Drake to be the equivalent of the release of The Dark Knight and how that changed people's perceptions on what comic book films could be.
Absolutely.
That's how I think that gaming has really shifted, because now it's not a thing where gaming is viewed as this degen activity, for lack of a better word, right?
Right.
It's something that the biggest rapper on the planet is doing. Now we're seeing that it's something that the biggest athletes in the world are doing.
Yes.
Everybody's gaming. It's not something that is reserved for this super niche audience that people have a lot of judgments and reservations for. It's for everybody. And esports and gaming together have kind of grown as a result of that, because there's so many more people paying attention, and very powerful people paying attention as well. One word that I like to use a lot is social buy-in. I think that whenever you have people like Robert Kraft, for instance, Jerry Jones and his family, like very powerful figures in the world, taking a look at esports, and not only taking a look, but actually committing from a dollar signs perspective.
Yeah.
That's big, because it's not just a couple of diehards within the space itself telling and preaching to the choir, essentially, that this is a big deal and you should pay attention.
Right.
It's now the world as a whole that is noting this is the next big thing.
Yep.
Now, how things kind of roll out remains to be seen. I'm very different in this space, because I think that a lot of people are trying to see the end game of esports, and they're picturing the NFL more or less. Okay. Whereas I'm kind of weird, and I see the esports model actually very successful, as it's more akin to, say, UFC or wrestling, for that matter.
Okay.
And I think it's one of those things where only time will tell. But I really do feel like what these next particular years in particular are all about is first off how we bounce back from the pandemic to a degree. I think gaming viewership as a whole, of course, has increased because everybody's inside.
Yeah.
But from a live events perspective, trying to figure out what the next iteration of a successful esports product would look like. And I don't think necessarily it's strictly tied to just being, here's a giant arena in Germany that we sold out.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be a lot of things that are maybe more along the lines of World Series of Poker, where it's maybe a little bit more smaller, a bit more intimate, and more personality focused. Because at the end of the day, the biggest challenge anyone in esports has, in gaming has, is they have to sell pixels to people. And the second you're able to humanize those kinds of stories and make it more about those big human moments and narratives and personalities, it becomes a much easier sell, I think, to the general public.
Wow. Yeah. That was deep. No, I mean it's so true. I think especially right now, esports has had to carry on, and it's done better than a lot of other traditional medias during this pandemic, and now it's sort of focusing on the future. Where do we go from here? What does a post-COVID-19 pandemic look like for the world of esports and gaming and things like that? So I think everybody's kind of taking a look. Everybody's formulating strategies and trying to, I mean, you can't predict what's going to happen. So you just got to, like you said, take a little faith, do the best you can, and hope for the best. But I think esports will definitely get through this, and it will only grow and thrive after this. And I think DreamHack is a wonderful live event. I can't wait, like I said, to go to my first one. I was so excited. I was telling you when you were first explaining the festival to me, I don't know if you could really tell, but internally my eyes were lighting up, sort of deal. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is so cool. I haven't been to an event like this in a while, and I'd love to go back. So I can't wait for that, and I hope to hear more soon from DreamHack. And I know you guys postponed the Dallas one, which is where I'm at.
Dallas and Summer both postponed to next year.
Yep, but I will definitely be buying tickets to that so I can experience it. And what do you want people to, or I guess I should say, where do you want people to go to find out about DreamHack and find out where they can keep up to date, not only about what they're doing, but what you're doing, if you're doing any single passion projects or anything like that?
Best place to connect with DreamHack is on everything social at DreamHack, and of course on our website, www.dreamhack.com. For myself, you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram at jvarg1990. I'm pretty open out there in regards to some of the things that we're working on. We definitely have a ton of very neat announcements along the way that I can't talk about yet. If we had this podcast maybe 3 weeks from now, I could talk about it.
Oh, dang it.
Talk right now.
Well, we'll have to have you back on then.
Yeah.
But awesome. Well, I will go ahead and link all those down below. We might also link them somewhere in the video, in the podcast. So thank you so much to Justin for coming on the show today. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about before we sign off here?
Stay safe, everybody. Play a copious amount of games. And as soon as this is all over, if you're outside of the esports space and you maybe haven't been to an esports event before, best thing you can do is just go. I don't care if it's one of our events, another company's events, if it's a massive arena event, or if it's a grassroots event that's in the back of a game store, whatever.
Yeah.
Get involved, go to an event. People are super nice and really eager to have folks help out in any way that they can. Because at the end of the day, we're all very small, lean teams that are taking on an enormous amount of work. And I promise, if you're looking to get your hands dirty and help out in some way, we will have work for you.
It's true. I mean, I could definitely attest to that. Everybody that I met says just go, just be a part of the community and learn everything that you can, because there's always a spot. So. Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Justin, again, for coming by and talking about the industry as well as your experience as the North American Marketing Manager for DreamHack. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I will leave links down in the description below for sure. Also, maybe throw them up on here. We might make an editor's note there. Remember, guys, if you like If you like the content that we're making, if you're learning anything from these podcasts, make sure to give us a like, comment, subscribe, do all the normal stuff that every other YouTube channel tells you to do. We really appreciate it. And just give us some feedback. What would you guys like to see as far as content that we have on the channel is concerned? What do you want to learn about? But big thanks again to Justin. I know I've said it a million times, but thank you again. And guys, we'll see you in the next one.